Yeah, you do a little off.
Do you want to do a quick sound check on this?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, actually, I don't know if I.
You set?
I don't think I have the right microphone. But I think I should be good.
Okay.
You didn't give me any.
Yep. Thank you. I didn't
You're
do
welcome.
that.
You can run through it, but you see.
Yeah.
As long as you What's that? Yeah, me too. I've been here, you know, this is
They
always
don't
ad
have,
hoc.
yeah, they don't have the option. Yes.
Art like on a wall. Art. ART.
I'll make it start.
Arms, no arms and legs right on the wall.
Style training start. Yeah.
No, I actually graduated from
Yeah.
I got my journal.
Those other photos were.
Okay.
The one that you had last year, recording to nothing. Yeah, there was one that comes here for the board.
Yes. It's so awkward.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is not the start. The sheriff is, is just a little late because he is checking the hope that the deceased female that was at the scene, we have a lead on her husband, and are trying to make sure that that notification goes through. So if we have a few minutes, then we'll have more information to give you. All right? We'll say around 10 minutes, okay?
I know, but it was fun to turn my phone. Yeah, but it's saying that my video turned around now.
Use one of Hag's stick things.
You have it on copy?
It was ordered one yesterday.
Yeah.
I got a notification that it shipped, so I ordered. I think it's really cool. Looks like a pretty cool thing. Well, I always.
Did you do something to the phone itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had that on both. That's it.
Flexible selfie stick. You can basically wrap around something.
Why is it telling me to turn it
It's got a
off?
phone now.
When to go live?
Yeah, I mean, he puts it, he's got.
But don't go live because
He's
yeah, I know,
got
but I
a
want
page
to
for it, and he's got it on back and forth. Fishing pole, he can do all kinds of stuff with it. It's not, and he's selling it for $24 for the whole thing. Buy one?
I actually had no idea.
Really?
She's so remote from me.
Well, I mean, just all over social media with it. That's the only reason I knew. I didn't even tell my son what it was.
Right, yeah, they're just a little worried about it, since we haven't seen it. They're gonna film our lives. Sure, sure. No, it's, I mean, everything is, if you want to see it, I didn't get my line in. We can, I don't see anything.
I'll
Yes, yes. Okay. That's okay. Nope, that's great. Yeah, no, yep.
So I'll let them know that.
Sure. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
But obviously, you were warming up. I shall do, because I'm not. What? Yeah. You don't think it's got like the internal.
It might.
Yeah. So you think that it needs some special input cord? Yeah. It's a nice paper. That's all.
Yeah, that's not all I
Put a
know.
level on it
Yeah.
and it's.
I hope we find out if it has any issues with it.
Oh, that's right, that's what you meant.
I mean, we might be able to figure out, see how it works. Take it.
Well, it makes this really kind of a pain.
What if we get some, or maybe it'll work. When we plugged in the I'm intrigued.
Are you doing that? I saw you.
It doesn't look like it's that cool.
Good.
A lot of planning.
Yes.
It almost seems like this is supposed to be paired with a bigger something. I was doing the Oroville first. You're asking, right, you don't know which source on that? Right. Just a lining for the internally, it's a separate amplifier. Yeah. So that's what I'm missing, but that thing's probably totally functional, it's just, yeah, it's worthless without the amplifier.
Right, yeah, it's just, all it is it is literally the whole box, it's not the, yeah. So it's
You nailed it.
I'll see if he wants to.
So it's a piece of puzzle. Probably can.
That sounds good. No.
Hey, you, sir.
I didn't even see him when I made that comment.
Good thing we're all friends.
I didn't even know that.
We're not this one? Don't bring one up. Okay.
Still up. Oh, there is. Sorry.
Ian, you speak. Do it. Go take it off. Yeah, you go it all over it. Are you folks ready? Yeah. Okay, hi and good morning. I'm Mike Ramsey, Butte County District Attorney. Last night was an extraordinary event in our small town of Oroville. A mass shooting, something that we have not had in this community. It occurred on a bus, and we are going to be hearing today to give a kind of synopsis of what happened last night, starting with the Oroville Police Chief and City Administrator, that is Bill Lagrone, L-A-G-R-O-N-E, and that will be followed by our Sheriff, Corey Honey, H-O-N-E-A. So we'll start with Chief Lagrone, and as to what happened starting last night.
Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. Thank everyone for being here. I appreciate that. It's a sad situation and a dire one, but thank you for being here and for us to get this information out to our community. Last night at approximately 19:33 hours, which is 7:33 p.m., the Oroville Police Department received a call of some sort of a dispute on a bus that involved firearm and the discharge of a firearm on the bus. Officers were immediately dispatched to the AMPM located at Orodam and Feather River Boulevard in Oroville, California. Upon their arrival, they located the bus, which was around behind the AMPM, which is the normal drop-off spot for the bus. They arrived on scene at 7:34, which is approximately 1 minute after receiving the call. At the same time, simultaneously, the Sheriff's Department was also responding to the call to assist the Oroville Police Department. The request for assistance was made, and the dispatch center of the Sheriff's Department was also monitoring traffic and understanding the magnitude of the situation, immediately dispatched their deputies to the area. Officers arrived on scene. They cleared the bus to ensure there was no suspect on the bus at that time. They located several victims inside of the bus. They immediately began to secure the area, to locate witnesses, to secure any evidence that is there, and also began treatment of the individuals that were hurt. But they also began a search of the area for the suspect. The suspect was seen fleeing the bus in a southbound direction, which was headed toward a shopping center, to an open field, and then eventually to Walmart. At approximately I believe it was 1954, which is 7:54 p.m., the suspect was located at the Oroville Walmart. Deputies immediately diverted to that area and detained the suspect at the Walmart in Oroville. And with that, I will hand it off to the sheriff, who can give you more detail as to those events.
Thank you, Chief Legrone. I appreciate that. Good morning, everyone. As you know, my name is Corey Honey, and I'm the sheriff of Butte County. I'm going to take my mask off so that people who have a hard time hearing these events are better able to hear me. So as Chief Legrone said, the Oroville Police Department received 911 call at around 7:30 last night from a Greyhound bus that was parked at the AM/PM market on Orodown Boulevard in Oroville. The reports from that bus was that there was a shooting taking place there. Of course, as you heard, Oroville Police Department responded. They asked for the assistance of the Butte County Sheriff's Office. We immediately sent deputies to that location. As our deputies were responding to that location to assist, 911 calls started to come into the Oroville Police Department indicating that the suspect involved in that shooting was now in the Walmart located about a half a mile south of the AM/PM where the shooting originally occurred. Our deputies, as well as allied law enforcement agencies, immediately diverted and went to Walmart. Upon entry into Walmart, our deputies, accompanied by a warden from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, encountered a subject. At that point, he had no clothing on, was acting in an erratic manner. Our deputies recognized or identified him based on the description that they had received, coupled with the behavior that he was exhibiting, and immediately were able to take him into custody without further incident or the use of any kind of force. So from that point on, we began to work the investigation in conjunction with the Oroville Police Department and the Butte County District Attorney's Office. We have a very good tradition here in Butte County of working these cases collaboratively, and last night was certainly no different. What we were ultimately able to piece together at this point, and let me preface these comments with, this is still an active and ongoing investigation. There is still information that is being gathered and data being analyzed. There is information that we have today that we're not going to release today because it's not appropriate at this point in time. So we're going to give you an overview. I recognize that you may have questions, but understand that the integrity of the investigation is very important, and we may not be able to answer questions. Additionally, I may not be able to give you information about the identities of various people, again, because we need to make proper notifications and make sure that the individuals who were involved in this have had a chance to talk to their loved ones. So with that, the information that we have from the passengers on the bus indicate that the suspect, who has been identified as Asid Elijah Coleman, age 21, of Sacramento, boarded the bus in Redding, California. He went to the rear portion of the bus, eventually took a seat. During the trip from Redding, there were a couple of stops along the way. My understanding is there was a stop in Red Bluff and a stop in Chico. As the bus came into Chico, it appears as though Mr. Coleman either made a telephone call or received a telephone call. That seemed to agitate him. At some point, he began to have a conversation with other members of the bus. I think the conversations at this point can best be characterized as him acting paranoid and agitated. At one point, there was some discussion about whether or not people were going to Los Angeles, and Los Angeles being a dangerous place. And that conversation then prompted Mr. Coleman to show some of the people on the bus a firearm that he had in a small bag or satchel that he was carrying. When they arrived in Oroville, as they parked behind the AAM/PM and people began to exit, that is when Mr. Coleman began to fire his weapon. As a result of that action, we have 5 people who sustained gunshot wounds or were injured. Unfortunately, one of those individuals passed away and died at the scene. I cannot release that individual's name right now because we are still working to coordinate notification of the next of kin. And I'm sure you can all appreciate the fact that we need to do that work before we make it public. It's the right thing to do. In addition to the victim who passed away, who died on scene, there was an 11-year-old girl. She was ultimately transported to the hospital and treated, and the report that I have is that she is currently in stable condition. There was a 25-year-old female who was pregnant, or is pregnant, I apologize. She sustained gunshot wounds. She was also transported to the hospital. She's been treated and currently listed in critical condition. There is a 38-year-old male. He sustained a minor injury. Ultimately, he was treated. His condition is good, and he's expected to be released from the hospital. There is a 32-year-old male sustained multiple gunshot wounds. He was transported to the hospital, underwent surgery, and currently is listed in critical condition. Again, I'm not prepared to release the names of those individuals because they need to coordinate, and we need to coordinate to make sure that their family members are aware of what's going on. The information that we received, as I told you a moment ago, was that the suspect fled the bus right after the shooting occurred. We've been able to retrace the suspect's steps. It appears that he ran south across Oroville Boulevard through a commercial area with some stores. Behind that, there is a charter school with an area that is under construction. He went through the area where the construction was taking place, and at that point dropped the firearm that had been used in the shooting. Later that evening, our deputies were able to recover that firearm. Then he continued southbound and ultimately ended up in the Walmart store. The preliminary information that we have with regard to his conduct within Walmart is that he made entry into Walmart, walked into the store a ways, ultimately walked over towards where the cash registers were. At some point became involved in a verbal altercation with a female. Her boyfriend was there, and then that resulted in a physical altercation. That was broken up, at which point he moved to the front of the store, began to remove his clothing, and that is when, at about that same time is when our deputies arrived on scene and were ultimately able to take him into custody. Mr. Ramsey, do you have information on his prior history?
Yes.
Would you like to go into that? Okay, then I'll finish up and I'll finish up and you can, yeah. Okay. Working in conjunction with the Oroville Police Department, and we called out the California Department of Justice Crime Lab. They worked on processing the crime scene as well as the bus. There are certain items of evidence located in there. I'm not going to go into that because, again, it's early on in the investigation, and it's better that that come out at a time when it's appropriate for the prosecution. Ultimately, this is a horrific tragedy that was visited upon our community, another tragedy that we're having to deal with and endure in this community. My heart goes out to all of the people that were on the bus, as well as the victims in this case. I am thankful that we were able to take this individual into custody. I'm thankful that no one else got hurt, and I'm really thankful and appreciative of the efforts of all of the law enforcement agencies in Butte County who came together once again in a time of crisis to perform what I would say remarkably well. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Ramsey, who can talk about the background of Mr. Coleman as well as how this case proceeds going forward.
Mr. Coleman's 21 years old. Indication is that he has been around California a bit. He had a juvenile record, but at this point we're not going to discuss that juvenile record. As an adult, he has had his brushes with the law and was currently wanted on a warrant out of Alameda for possession of a firearm by a prohibited person. So, prohibited person being youth and a prior felony that we won't get into at this juncture because we're talking juvenile record. I'd like to follow up on what the sheriff had indicated in the cooperation of law enforcement. The scene that the police, sheriff, DA's office came into was rather chaotic. We had some 25 passengers and a bus driver that had to be basically corralled, brought to this office and the sheriff's office to be interviewed and their human needs taken care of. Very fortunate to have a Victim Assistance Bureau in the DA's office called out their crisis response team and then took care of those people last night, put them in a local hotel, took care of their toiletry needs, their food needs, some counseling needs, and those folks now are getting ready to board another bus to go on their way. This is the bus that they came in on, and you'll notice this is a bullet hole through that windshield. So kind of the logistics of getting all of these people and their luggage all back together and now on their way back on a bus to LA has been somewhat extraordinary. Last night, the Department of Justice out of Reading came and did the large part of the CSI work inside of that bus. The Department of Justice criminalists did find some casings, empty casings, and the indication is they had found 12 9mm expended casings, which was consistent with what we heard from the witnesses of somewhere north of 10 shots. So a lot of shots. And inside of that bus, a lot of shots through seats towards the front of the bus. Anything that you want to add and before we take questions?
Yeah, I'll just make this note that what we will probably do once we are satisfied that we have made the proper notifications to the victim's next of kin as well as family members, then we'll probably release the name of the decedent through a standard media release. But that work needs to be done before we do that. And so that's all I wanted to add to that. I guess with that, we can take some questions.
One final question or statement. It's our intent. The man was taken into custody last night, Wednesday. It's our intent to see if we can get together all of the information necessary to file charges against him, and that would be at 3 o'clock tomorrow in Butte County Superior Court. So We'll ask him questions.
All right,
Bill?
let's do this. We'll be systematic about it, and we're going to work our way across the room. That way it doesn't turn into a free-for-all. So I'm going to start right here. with my-
Sheriff,
Yes, sir.
thank you. I wanted to ask you, all the things that you say that he, allegedly did, the suspect in all this, it doesn't sound normal. So are we looking into whether he was under the influence, if he was, in some sort of drugs or anything? Have we looked
Yeah.
into that?
Well, that's certainly part of the investigation, and we'll make an effort to determine whether or not drugs or alcohol played a role in this, or whether or not there was a mental health issue, or whatever other factors may be relevant here, but that's certainly an ongoing part of the investigation. Good. Anybody on this side? No, moving on, yes.
Thank you, Sheriff. Are you able to specify what type of weapon was used to discharge those 9mm rounds?
Yeah, at this point, what we'll say is it was a 9mm handgun.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Moving across. Yes, sir.
Was there some sort of altercation with another passenger, or was it just his agitation, and was he shooting indiscriminately, or was he actually targeting somebody?
Yeah. So he was exhibiting what I think could best be described as paranoid behavior. There was some indication that he thought one of the other passengers was an undercover law enforcement officer. That resulted in some agitation. Certainly there was, he was agitated or started raising his voice to the degree that that ultimately resulted in a significant confrontation between the two of them. We're still working to clarify all of that. And as to his intended targets, who they may have been, at this point, I'm not going to speculate. We're going to let the case develop, and then Mr. Ramsey can develop that, and ultimately that could become disclosed when the case goes to court. Hold on a second. I'll come back. Anybody on this side? Yes, sir.
Was the gun possessed legally?
We don't have that. No, it was not possessed legally. We know that because he was a prohibited person. How he obtained it or what its origin is, that is work that is still being done. But we can say clearly that this particular individual in no way, shape, or form should have been in possession of a firearm. And as Mr. Ramsey noted, there is a previous history of this individual who is merely 21 engaged in this kind of conduct. And so I'll work my way back and I'll come back to you.
I just want to make sure it's A-C-H-I-D, Elijah Coleman. Just want to make sure you got the spelling correct.
If Mr. Ramsey could help me out, that'd be fantastic.
And then also, did he get on by himself in Reading, or was he with others?
He got on by himself in Reading, and the spelling of his first name is A-S-A-A-H-D-I.
Can you say that one more time, please?
A-S-A-A-H-D-I.
And how do you say it?
Well, we'll leave that to you to determine
Okay.
how you say it. Okay. All right, I want to be systematic. Anybody back over here? Coming this way?
So, obviously, I wanted to ask you, you said he had some sort of warrant out of Alameda County. Is he for sure from Alameda County?
His residences have changed over some period of time. So to say he's from Alameda County, he has had somewhat of a transient lifestyle.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I'll come back to you. Go ahead.
Can you list out that warrant one last time? The warrant out of Alameda County?
Yeah, my understanding is it was a felony warrant for a probation violation. We don't know the underlying violation. We're still working with the authorities there to understand that. Go ahead.
Where was he born?
We don't know that right now. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Are we looking at any possible special enhancements to the fact that he had the gun not legally possessed?
That's a question for Mr. Ramsey.
And that would not be, there's a separate charge for having the weapon. There's a separate charge for using the weapon.
Thank you.
Coming back this way. Yes, sir.
Two questions. One, do a Google search. It looks like that AM/PM is a standard stop for Greyhound. That was a normal stop. It wasn't a stop because of passengers.
That's correct. That is our understanding. Yeah.
And then secondly, the deceased female, do we have an age on her?
43. Yeah. Moving over. Okay, one last sweep back before. Okay, very good. And I recognize, especially with regard to our local media, if you need individual on cameras, we want to accommodate that. but we need to do that in an orderly fashion, so you have to wait your line. And as my standard practice, I always take care of my local media first. Okay? All right, thank you all very much, appreciate it.
Okay. Would we be able to put the suspect photo back up on screen? Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, folks, thank you very much, and we'll remain up here. And if somebody wants an individual interview, we can do that, but we'll have to go one at a time and do it systematically. Okay?